Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and it's time for another best of 3 series of Terran versus Terran. I just realized it has been a little while since I last casted some TVT, so I'm very curious to see what the most recent developments in the matchup are. Now both players already sending out workers awfully early on into this match to the other side of the map. Spawning here in the bottom right hand corner of Acid Plant, we have none other than Gumiho. Actually, I was gonna say, if these workers meet in the middle, they would kind of know exactly what is going on right from the get-go, but I think that indeed both of our Terran players are starting off this match with a little bit of cheese. Will those two see each other? Gumiho, are you... Oh! No, he does see it. He does see it. Does he decide to respond to it? Yeah, he does indeed decide to return around. Anyway, spotting here in the top left-hand corner of the map, we have our blue Terran player. He's the previous world champion of StarCraft, of course. He is known by the name of ByuN. So there are indeed a couple of SCVs here duking it out already. A few more SCVs have now been pulled off the line as well. That barracks from Gumiho is completely unscouted for the time being. I don't think that ByuN knows that that one is now going up on his side of the map. This is starting off really interestingly already. Love this though. Apparently a quick supply depot to try and block these SCVs from getting in there. But eventually this one hero SCV did end up getting the kill on the SCV that was building the barracks. And right now, that barracks is not done. Whereas on the other side of the map, a Reaper is already coming out here for our Terran player in red. And ByuN, he says ... He doesn't really know exactly what is going on here either. I'll be honest with you, I haven't heard too much about ByuN in recent times. Gumiho apparently is going to target fire that one down with just a single SCV. ByuN, of course, he was extremely good in StarCraft 2, still very well known to be one of the very best micro players on the planet. And definitely still one of the strongest Terrans out, but recently, I guess you can never be on the top of your game for you know, extended periods of time, unless you're innovation, but, you know, recently he hasn't been as dominating as he was once upon a time, and Gumiho will also pick up the victory here in game number 1. Honestly, that may have very well been the fastest match of professional TVT that I've ever seen. I mean, that game quite literally ended with one Reaper, right? And that's not normally how things go. Now, I know that some of you may be looking at that and be like, hey, didn't ByuN GG out maybe a little bit preemptively? And maybe you can kind of give a bit of an argument for that. The thing is, though, that Reaper was gonna get a lot of worker kills, and there's no denying that a second Reaper would be joining in just a little bit, and there wouldn't really be anything for ByuN to defend against that. Plus, on top of that, he would be behind in economy, but also in tech, because obviously Gumiho was gonna be able to continue his tech up towards a factory and whatnot significantly faster, and you just lose out on several minutes. Maybe there's like a 1 in 100 chance that Gumiho would mess up somewhere along the way, but there's really, you know, at this level of play, there's really no particular reason why ByuN wouldn't GG out right there. And on top of that, of course, you do have to keep in mind, he's playing a best of 3 series. Being mentally defeated going into the second game because you stuck it out for much longer than you needed to in game 1 usually isn't particularly smart here either. Anyway, we'll see if game 2 brings a little bit more excitement, because this time around, judging by that production tab, we see a much more standard build here for both players. Gumiho, though, so far has decided that he wants to go for a second refinery here already. That does mean that he's planning to go for both a Reaper more than likely, and then also a very quick factory follow-up. This does allow him to tech up really, really rapidly. There we go. Immediately, we do see that Reaper coming up, and then the factory afterwards as well. This is something that players have been doing a little bit more as of late. Actually, now 2 SCVs are pulled off the gas, and even a third one here as well. Very interesting. So just a super quick Reaper with a factory here. Apparently that is worth getting the second refinery for as well. Whereas ByuN looks at this, he's already SCV scouted, of course. He looked at that and be like, you know, I am gonna be okay just simply producing my command center here on the high ground. So one of the things that I personally love to do whenever I do get to play Terran versus Terran, for those of you unfamiliar, I've been playing a ton of random in 2018 and 2017 in StarCraft 2. I've been playing a lot of random, and whenever I play TVT over at the live stream, I do usually love to play Cyclones. Cyclones are absolutely incredible in this matchup, just because of the fact that they kind of just kill everything in the earlier stages of the game. Now, speaking of killing everything, I wonder if if Gumiho is going to be able to deal any damage here whatsoever. ByuN smartly playing it really safe here, has decided that he wants to leave that Reaper at home for a little while longer. Now, that micro from Gumiho was just slightly superior, although apparently he was hitting that SCV a couple too many times, and that means that the Reaper is going to return back once again to pick up the worker there eventually as well. Wow. I did not quite expect that that would happen. It's little things like that, right? People ask like, hey, how does it happen? How do players start slumping in SC2? Like, how does that happen? It's not so much that they aren't strong anymore. It's just that they aren't progressing as fast as competition. That right there didn't look like a massive deal, but it can definitely turn out to be a big deal. If that command center didn't finish, for example, that may have been a very much so game-ending moment. Now, one of the Reapers will end up paying for that with its life. The Marines, though, do end up going down as well, but luckily for ByuN, he did finish up the command center. That means that he gets to morph in his orbital command. But if, for example, that CC was delayed just because Gumiho showed us some minor, you know, superior micro, the command center would be delayed, ByuN would have been supply blocked, the command center would have not been able to morph into an orbital command as quickly, and he would have lost out on a mule. That's a supply block, and like probably, you know, a mule mines for about 300 minerals, that probably would have missed him out on about 150 minerals if he had to wait there until the Cyclone chased away all of those units. So it's a small thing, but it adds up really quickly at this level of play. Gumiho Nado making that switch towards the 1-1-1, very, very classic kind of style. I'm personally a big fan of seeing this out of Terran players, just because you can get such a big variety of units. So he's gonna go for a couple of Marines. There's a Cyclone now joining in, as well as that Raven. Love this little move as well. Gumiho is sitting there in the middle of the map. This is actually just in the middle of the bush. So that does mean that if ByuN decides to send, for example, his own Cyclone across, it wouldn't start firing until he's already overextended. A cheeky little moment there. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily have to pay off, but it's one of those small things that can win you the game very, very quickly. ByuN Nado moving out, but apparently we already do see Gumiho sitting up on that high ground. He knows... I love that. See how cool that is? This is literally exactly like playing chess. There's a single Hellion there on the high ground, spotting everything. Now he knows exactly where he needs to position his army. He will be able to deflect this medevac from unloading all of the Marines on the high ground. And all of a sudden, Gumiho seems to be in a very solid position once again. Now, apparently, though, I say that immediately the Raven does get picked off. That justifies a lot of this push immediately here for ByuN. Still, Gumiho is gonna indeed continue to chase, even though the R3 Cyclones, one of them was indeed in a bit of an inferior position with that interference matrix. He does need to be careful, not putting the weakened Cyclone in the front, but the high ground advantage, of course, will still give him a whole lot of additional vision. In the meantime, though, on the other side of the map, Gumiho is not slowing down, economically speaking. He is indeed expanding towards a third base here already, and he's also now adding on more and more barracks. So he is getting indeed himself that Stimpack upgrade as well. So he will be able to switch towards a biological-based army. We see something very similar, though. In the meantime, on the other side of the map, ByuN also starting up his own Stimpack upgrade. He will be able to start now also his third CC. So we're sort of arriving in a very similar mid-game here. Neither player really taking significant amounts of damage. They're just sort of taking a different path to getting towards that mid-game. Siege tank. Like, look how beautiful that timing is, right? So sick. Now, you will be able to, at the very least, deal a whole lot of damage, though, is ByuN. ByuN did end up getting a single siege tank there, as well as a Cyclone for 2 Cyclones. I guess that's a worthwhile trade. One of the SCVs is desperately trying to repair up this weakened Cyclone as well, but it's busy chasing down ByuN's. It's these little things that add up very, very quickly, in particular in TVT. I've always sort of viewed Terran versus Terran as this matchup that is very much so about chess. Basically, Cyclones just sort of kill everything in the early game until siege tanks come out in bigger numbers. Then all of a sudden, siege tanks can dominate a lot of the game as well. However, if there's one siege tank weakness, it's of course its mobility. It deals a lot of damage, it can zone an area very nicely, but Terrans with Marines and medevacs can easily run you around and really outzone you. Another thing about the siege tank that makes it a very interesting unit is that it needs it needs additional vision. It can shoot away further than it can actually see, is what I'm trying to say. So you need that air dominance, for example with Vikings, to really make sure that you get yourself the value that you're looking for. Now, one of the Cyclones apparently snuck across the map. That does mean that a couple of these units will have to return back home, as well as a few of them. Well, look at that. That's a solid amount of workers there. At the same time, though, the double medevac drop has now arrived inside of that main base. It's immediately gonna go after the tech lab. It did not finish up Stimpack. It got denied there. That's a massive deal. ByuN knowing exactly what time he needs to get in there in order to try and make sure that he can prevent his opponent from finishing up Stimpack. That's a massive deal. That's a massive deal. Honestly, denying Stimpack, it's a long upgrade. It's one of the most important upgrades at this point in the game as well. That means that ByuN apparently wants to continue onwards for a little while longer. I don't know if he's maybe overstaying his welcome. He will be able to just barely pick up with some very ByuN-esque micro the two low HP siege tanks there into that medevac. But that's a very, very nicely done, executed move. Nicely done, executed move. That was almost correct English, Lowko. I said that out loud and then I started thinking, like, wait, no, that made sense in my head. But it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, this is another ByuN-esque move. ByuN always moves over to the third base location after this. Instead, now, he's playing against his own image, and he's dropping all of the units inside of the main once again. Stimpack, of course, is done here for the player in blue. He's gonna be able to stim and just simply deal so much damage to so much of that army. And Gumiho decides to GG out as ByuN picks up a super nice victory. Now, imagine, right? If he would have had if Gumiho would have had Stimpack here, I think he would have been in a much better position. Alrighty, so that does mean we even up the score. The next map is gonna be a Blackpink LE. It's actually pretty interesting. When I first started making YouTube videos, I was trying to decide what language I should do it in, right? So obviously, I'm from the Netherlands, I do speak Dutch. Believe it or not, ik kan ook gewoon Nederlands praten in de video's, but you know, the reason is that a lot of you would probably not speak Dutch. And I decided once upon a time that I indeed was gonna make videos in English. The thing is, though, that I initially was very worried that people would absolutely hate the accent. And by the way, Gumiho once again opening up with a little bit of cheese here. But I was worried that people would absolutely hate the accent and that they wouldn't really want to watch those videos. It turns out, though, that at least for the majority of people out there, you may find some of the mistakes that I make in English, or maybe some of the pronunciations that I do, you know, interesting, maybe a little bit funny. But a lot of people actually don't mind it whatsoever. I assumed that people would get very upset, you know, once they realized that my English wasn't absolutely perfect. And I guess these days it's pretty decent, but back in the day, you know, I obviously did not quite have the same amount of words that I could say in English, and I was repeating myself a whole lot more often. In particular, like 3, 4, 5 years ago, when I first started making these commentated videos, I was really worried that people wouldn't really like it very much. But it turns out pretty much the opposite is true. It seems like a lot of people do like, and at the very least, like, you know, at the very least, it's pretty recognizable, right? I mean, if you hear a bunch of StarCraft commentators talk, at the very least, you'll be able to pick out very easily which one of the voices is mine. And you probably know whether or not it's me that is talking. Anyways, before I blabber on about unrelated stuff anymore, Gumiho has decided that he wants to try and test the waters once again with a little bit of cheese. He's now sent that SCV here up onto the high ground. He now knows that his opponent has indeed decided to go for a very quick factory. ByuN not going for an SCV scout, not going for a low ground expansion, and not going for a Reaper. That does mean that he's in a pretty decent position to defend this, in particular once the factory finishes up. But until then, these Reapers will have free reign of the map. I'm curious to see if maybe Gumiho even decides to go for like a bit of a bunker to back up into. Not super common, but he can at the very least use the SCV here to take some of that hitting as well. Apparently, though, that one SCV did get booted off the platform onto that grill, but the Reaper ended up killing one of those Marines as well. And here's his little brother joining in. Now, a Hellion will be coming out here in just a little bit. Gumiho with a bit of miss micro, though, running these, oh my god, running these Reapers almost to their deaths. Of course, one of the nice things about the Reaper is that they will be able to return to full HP very quickly. Gumiho now also actually deciding to lift up one of the barracks to provide that high ground vision, but I think he was secretly hoping that ByuN would have been going for the same build as he did in game number 2, where he went for the low ground expansion. This time around, ByuN immediately went for the factory and then also now the starport. I think if he manages to get, for example, a Banshee out, right, he's gonna be in a phenomenal position to hold against whatever it is that Gumiho has got in store for us. The thing is, though, there are still 4 of those Reapers out, they will be able to nibble away at units very, very nicely. Actually, even landing the barracks there to be even more so of a nuisance, that actually makes this a bit of an interesting scenario to be in. ByuN will end up losing that supply depot here, but Gumiho, I mean, he's still dashing back and forth. He knows that he's on a timer right now. He knows that he will end up losing all of those Reapers as soon as that Banshee comes out. Cloak will be activated right now as well for ByuN. We'll see if he decides to cancel that one in maybe just a little bit. Apparently, Gumiho now has decided that all he really needs to do is just go after the supply depots and deal as much damage to those as possible. But with a Cyclone joining us, as well as, of course, that Banshee in just a second, I think that the harassment has been shut down. In the meantime, on the other side of the map, Gumiho being brave enough to immediately put down the command center on the low ground here as well. One of the barracks was already floating back home. That's the one that was, of course, still producing Reapers here for a little while longer. It has decided to fly back home, and in the meantime, Gumiho has also secured himself a factory as well as a starport. He's now also getting himself the cloaking field, so I'm curious to see whether or not Gumiho will maybe decide to go for a Banshee after there's a Raven finishing up. But speaking of Banshees, ByuN has already moved his one across the map, and he has not cancelled the cloaking field upgrade, which means that he is indeed looking to deal a bunch of damage. Now, of course, Ravens, besides just being super useful spellcasters, they are also detectors here for the Terran player, so Gumiho should be able to shut this one down. I'm curious, though, to see whether or not he's going to move in before the command center finishes up building. I think that would be a very nice moment here for our Terran player. He now knows about the fact that the command center is still building, definitely looks to be hunting down that SCV that's building, and he will be able to grab that one almost immediately. Nice interference matrix once again, though, here by Gumiho. He will be able to do a lot of damage to that one as well, and the Banshee does end up going down. Even though it had its cloaking field research, there was no particular reason for that to be activated just because of that Raven. So very nicely done there by Gumiho, having a very nice grasp of this matchup. At the same time, though, there still is no detection inside of that main base here of the Terran player in red. The Banshee could potentially go in there and deal some damage, but Gumiho is sniffing out what's going on as well. Immediately decides to return this one into the main base, waiting to accumulate energy for another interference matrix, and if he manages to hit it in time, of course he can shut down this Banshee from dealing any kind of damage. Then he can just simply reroute the Cyclones from the natural inside of that main base. ByuN realizes it as well. He realizes that, hey, I'm not going to be able to really deal any damage on the other side of the map. The best way to push my advantage is indeed by creating another one of those command centers. So we are setting ourselves up for a nice little macro game. Gumiho, though, uncharacteristically here, he has also finished up his own Banshee cloak upgrade. I don't really know exactly whether or not ByuN is expecting this. He has been saving up a little bit of energy. I wonder if he's gonna go for a mule right now. If he goes for a mule right now, he might be in a little bit of trouble. At the same time, though, we do now see that Banshee going to town in the middle of the main base here of the opponent. Interference matrix will now shut down that unit as well. But here we go. There is a little bit of energy still available in that command center. Beautifully done here by ByuN. He should be able to have at the very least a single scan available, but are there actually enough Marines? So far, it does look like that is not the case, and Gumiho going for a very interesting move there, right? Going for something that you would not normally expect. He went for the Raven into the cloaked Banshee. Not something you usually do because it's so uncommon, and apparently ByuN did also not expect this to happen, and worker after worker ends up going down. Another scan will activate. Will the Banshee be able to get out of there? Ugh. It will apparently get out of there. ByuN does eventually pick it up, though, but that's 2 scans, as well as, of course, a whole lot of workers that ended up going down. And Gumiho, well, I do want to say that he was previously behind. Right now, he's looking in a very, comfortable position. His third base just finished up here as well. Another Banshee apparently now coming up here. Apparently ByuN trying to decide if he can maybe build a missile turret on this part of the map here as well. But that's 10 workers in total here. Very, very nicely done. Gumiho apparently has decided that he wants to mix it up a little here. He's decided to go for the double factory play, which I like a lot. Double armory as well. Usually that's an indication that the Terran player in red wants to play pretty passively here. A scan will now confirm the location of that cloak banshee, and it will be picked off here with those cyclones and those marines as well. Gumiho now moving over towards the third base, but it's going to be mech here for the player in red and bio for the player here in blue. So this is going to be, you know, a match of all ages, I suppose. This is the kind of game that I personally really like watching. Usually with mech, you play it quite a bit slower, although I say that, and Gumiho is moving across the map. Luckily for ByuN, he does spot this right now. ByuN, of course, having that superior supply advantage right now, mostly caught up in units at this point in the game. There are still a lot of siege tanks here available. Stimpack is now done as well. Another interference matrix, though, as well as that anti-armor missile will be able to get rid of a lot of those units at the same time, though. Another anti-armor missile will shut down a significant chunk of the opposing army as well. Marines are stimming forward. They will be able to take care of that single siege tank, and ByuN once again picks up a very nice engagement. I like that. I honestly have to say, I really like the role of the Raven in this matchup. I don't really like the Raven very much in the other Terran matchups, just because they can be masked quite confidently in the late game, and it creates these weird stalemate scenarios. But I have to say, I really like the way that they are playing out right here, just because they provide so much support, right? Interference Matrix can just shut down so many of those units. It can really change the dynamic in the tide of battle quite confidently. And then, of course, the anti-armor missile, changing up the entirety of the engagement as well. If you have Marines in particular, I mean, it can do so much damage, for example, against mech. Anyway, ByuN now making a move forward. Obviously, there are a couple of sieged up tanks here as well for Gumiho. I'm curious to see how this one is gonna play out. Couple of Vikings now trying to see if they can potentially take care of that opposing Raven, but one of them will have to pay for this with its life. But there we go, though. Apparently a pretty aggressive move forward. Not sure if I agree with this one. The siege tank does end up dying here. A second one will now also be landed. ByuN trying to see if he can do some cute micro. Interference Matrix will now shut down one of those siege tanks here as well. It does look like the Marines will be able to get a bit of an angle, but I don't think that that fight was particularly successful, unless ByuN manages to pick up all of those Vikings here as well. I think he's better off just by simply going back home. An eye for an eye, I suppose, right? Players trying to deal a little bit of damage to each other continuously throughout this game. It's what makes this such a tricky matchup, right? Because it's all about like that map control and the way you're moving across the map. And I always kind of feel like Terran can have like it's like almost playing two different races. Bio and mech just simply play out so very differently. Double medevacs now once again loaded up, though. I'm curious to see if maybe we're going to see a bit of a drop in the main base. Gumiho already knows apparently about this potential as well. He's now roaming around with that group of Vikings. And here we go, though. The single group of Vikings will now be able to go after these medevacs. They will be able to pick them off with relative ease. Looks like there are more than enough defensive units now available here as well for Gumiho to pick this one off. And while ByuN is desperately trying to see if he can deal some damage, he's really not getting the value that he's looking for. Gumiho, even with the star senses there, look at that, right? That scan completely out of the blue will indeed confirm that a small chunk of that Terran army was trying to retreat. I personally, right, if I saw the double medevac drop going into my main base, I probably would have unsieged all my tanks and then attack moved with the F2A move straight into my own main, and then obviously my third base would have been vulnerable. Gumiho, of course, far too good for that. He will be able to deflect this army, and with that, pick up the supply lead that he was not having the advantage of earlier. He's got a very solid army, and remember, right, he's going for double armory upgrades. This is a big deal. Usually, Terran players that play mech don't really want to move out until they finish up 2-2. He's likely going to be able to max out right around, I don't know, like a minute or two from now. Terran players really start maxing out really quite rapidly at this point in the game, but it doesn't really matter. I'm assuming he's going to go for a bit of a push here once 2-2 finishes. Few Hellions will now also go down. I like this move here from ByuN, though. He's decided to go for another orbital command, knowing that his best way of obtaining the victory here is by outmining his opponent and just by simply producing a lot more units. 2-2, though. For a Terran player in blue is currently behind on the one here from the player in red. And here we go. 2-2, just about to finish here for Gumiho. He's immediately unsieged all of his tanks, and he's now making a big, aggressive move through the center of this map. ByuN does now know that this is going on. He will be able to get one of those siege tanks picked off for practically free. There are still a lot of units, though, remaining inside of those medevacs as well. Another one of those recent additions that Gumiho has really liked a lot. But at the same time, though, this Terran army has now stimped forward. It's trying to see if it can potentially deal some damage. Medevacs will be forced to pick up a lot of those units as well, but Gumiho needs to be extremely... Oh my god, nicely done there. Gumiho needs to be extremely careful when he makes these kind of aggressive moves through the map. Now, he does get one of the medevacs there for his troubles. ByuN once again scanning here to confirm where that opposing army is located. He now knows about the double siege tank here. There are still some marauders remaining as well, but at the same time, in the middle of the map, we see a massive engagement. Terran ByuN going up against a massive Terran mech army. The siege tanks are trying to get into position, and I think that there is just a little bit too much here for the player in red, right? At the same time, though, there is still some damage that's being done here on the other side of the map. 2 marauders remain, as well as a single one of those siege tanks. A couple of units still sending out at that watchtower as well. We'd love to see them stim forward and maybe go for their next base as well. ByuN are trying to micro several different angles at once, but the siege tanks are creeping forward. They're trying to see if they can get close to all of these command centers, and while indeed ByuN is still dealing damage here inside of the main base of his Terran opponent, I think that Gumiho just has too much army here, right? How are you gonna shut this one down? You can't go for Liberators anymore because Gumiho already has that Viking advantage as well. The boys are now pulled off the line as well. ByuN desperately trying to see if he can clean this one up, but he already lost 35 SCVs, 37, 38 SCVs in just a matter of seconds. And these Vikings, they are landed. They deal bonus damage to mechanical. Some cute pickup micro there as well by Gumiho. I don't know if you caught that, but he picked up the landed Vikings inside of medevacs. And yes, you can do that. You can indeed try and prevent your opponent from dealing damage to your Vikings by just simply picking them up in a medevac when they are landed to the ground. But that was a very nicely played game there. It does turn out to be that Gumiho is just a little bit better than ByuN right now in the TVT matchup. Although that first game, though, right? I would love it if we could see another game between them, because that first game. That was definitely a moment where Terran players just cringed just a little bit. A bit of a frustrating moment there for our Terran player in blue, but ByuN ends up losing this series. Gumiho is the one who is victorious. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. Other than that, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Links are down below in the description of this video. And of course, a special shout out to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. But I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I'll see you in the next one.